Well, hello there. I'm glad you weren't here 5 minutes ago because I was getting a little misty-eyed that this is the fourth and final Anchorman Webinar Series supported by Zeiss. Very sad indeed. Well, anyways, tonight we're joined by three illustrious guests. They are Dr. Dan Reinstein in the UK, Dr. Sri Ganesh in India, and Dr. Cyrille Temstet in France. And of course, we'll be discussing lenticule extraction. The time is now. Speakers, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to kick off and ask Dr. Reinstein, what are the relative advantages of being able to offer SMILE as well as LASIK and PRK?
Patients come to us for vision correction, and PRK is a great procedure, LASIK is a great procedure, SMILE is a great procedure, but they're not all the same. And, whereas you hear people talking about SMILE as the best procedure, I don't talk like that. I just say that it has advantages over LASIK and PRK, but LASIK has advantages over PRK and SMILE, and PRK has advantages over the other two. So for me, it's always about choosing the optimal procedure for a particular patient or the particular eye. And being able to do all three procedures is the way of being able to produce the optimal procedure. Does it mean that that you're bad if you don't do SMILE? No, LASIK is a great procedure, but there are advantages to SMILE. So, being able to offer people the three options, I think, is the best. So how much SMILE do we do given the choice? So, in our practice, 80% of our patients who could have LASIK or SMILE have SMILE. So 20% are still having LASIK, and there are many reasons we could talk about later. But we still use LASIK in about 20% of our patients. It's not a dead procedure. It's very much alive. PRK is the procedure which we do less than 1% of. So for us, that's the least favorite procedure with the most disadvantages. And we only use it really if it's a therapeutic situation where someone has anterior corneal pathology, basement membrane dystrophy, a scar, or some reason for doing PRK. But dry eye is not a reason for switching from LASIK to PRK anymore. That's a reason for switching from LASIK to SMILE, because we can do SMILE in patients with, mild or even moderate dry eye.
Dr. Sri Ganesh, how do you compare SMILE, LASIK, and PRK in terms of, or I should say, do you like being able to offer all three of those?
Yeah, we offer all of them and phakic IOLs. We have what is known as comprehensive refractive solutions, and that's what we offer in our clinic, which includes PRK, LASIK, SMILE, tissue addition, phakic IOLs. So we have a whole gamut of procedures, and then we first assess the patient and then decide what is suitable for their eye, for their needs, and then decide on the procedure. Because some of the procedures have specific indications. Like Dan said, if the patient has mild to moderate dry eye, I would prefer to go with SMILE. And if the patient has basement membrane dystrophy or needs therapeutic procedures like a TopoLink treatment, then PRK would be the choice. Even enhancement, sometimes we prefer PRK. And then if the patient is presbyopic, then definitely we do LASIK with presbyon. So every procedure has its indication, and then we decide as to which procedure would be best for the patient and then suggest it. So, but in our procedure, like Dan said, in our clinic, about 80% of the procedures are SMILE. This is the preferred procedure. If everything is fine, this is the procedure we prefer over LASIK and PRK, but we also do LASIK and PRK and offer those to our patients for specific indications.
And Dr. Temstet, how do you like being able to offer all three, SMILE, LASIK, PRK, in your clinic?
Yes, as Dan said, I think offering all available surgeries options give us the opportunity to choose the best option individually for each patient. Lenticule extraction with SMILE is considered to offer advantages compared to LASIK and PRK. It's a minimally invasive flapless procedure without pain, fast recovery, great patient acceptance. It's definitively a procedure which belongs to my portfolio now.
Dr. Reinstein, back to you. You've been doing SMILE for many years. How would you say patients have responded overall to lenticule extraction versus other procedures?
Well, I'm not going to say this is a good thing. I would rather patients not be choosing procedures because they're not medically qualified to do so. But it goes without saying that if you tell a patient how LASIK works, first we're going to cut a flap, then we're going to lift it, we're going to put it back, or you say we're going to delineate a certain volume of tissue from within the cornea and remove it through a 2 millimeter incision, it goes without saying that patients respond positively to that information. I mean, in fact, the difficulty is when someone is more suitable for LASIK and they come in convinced that the only procedure that they want is SMILE. And, for that matter, if a patient comes in here and says, I came to you because of SMILE, which they do. And well, why? Well, because I didn't want to flap. Even if I'm going to do SMILE, I spend 5 minutes explaining to them that had I decided that LASIK would be better, we would be doing LASIK. And then they say, no, I wouldn't have done anything. Then I go into the discussion as to why not, and I convince them that they would have had LASIK because of all the myths that they have in their head about LASIK being wrong. So, I still spend the 5 minutes convincing them that LASIK is fine, even if I'm going to do SMILE, because they're going to go out and tell their friends to go there for SMILE, and then some of them are going to come in, and they're going to be better candidates for LASIK. I think, as Cyrille said, we have to maintain, and actually as Sri said, we should not be talking about procedures. We should be talking about vision correction, about solving the problem they came to us for. And yes, SMILE is going to be 80% of the myopic corrections we do, but no one should feel second class if they don't get SMILE.
Dr. Ganesh, how do your patients respond to lenticule extraction nowadays?
If you look at the patient experience between the three procedures, SMILE is probably takes the shortest time, especially with the new VisuMax 800. That's the shortest procedure, even shorter than PRK. The patient experience intraoperative pain is minimal or hardly there, and post-op again non-existing when you compare it to LASIK and PRK. LASIK, you have a little bit of discomfort for a few hours after the procedure, but with PRK you can have tearing and discomfort for a couple of days. So the patient experience is totally different, and also the restrictions post-op. With SMILE, there are hardly any restrictions. After 24 hours, the patient can do whatever they want, get back to their activities, even sports, gym and other activities. Whereas with LASIK, you have restrictions. They have to wear shields when they sleep at night. With PRK, again, the medication, post-op medication is prolonged for a couple of months. They need to use steroids. So the patient experience, I think, is the best with SMILE. Like Dan said, we basically offer the procedure which is best to the patient and convince them that, yes, for your eyes, this is the best procedure. But patients, of course, if they are talking amongst themselves, the PRK patient, the LASIK patient, and the SMILE patient, the SMILE patients have a better experience as such. And now the visual recovery is great, is as good as LASIK, the day one wow factor. So all these things have made SMILE the preferred procedure if the candidate is suitable for SMILE.
Dr. Temstet, we've heard from two experts about the patient experience related to lenticule extraction. What say you about this?
I must tell you that I've not started with the new VisuMax. I've performed some cases with the previous VisuMax 500. Even if there were some challenges in the beginning, it has no compromised the patient great response. All of my patients were very satisfied, and all of them had the feeling that they have made the good choice. No flap, fast recovery, and potentially less dry eyes symptoms. So I know that it's a very good procedure, and I think between the LASIK, PRK, and the SMILE, I heard what the previous surgeons speak about, and I'm sure it will be a standard in my clinic now.
Would you like to mention anything else about the learning curve for lenticule extraction, Dr. Temstet?
I have the feeling that the learning curve for lenticule extraction is completely different than from LASIK or PRK. Especially the part where the surgeon manipulates the lenticule to manually extract it is something different, and it's a little practice, surgeon skills, and a good onboarding. From my point, I would say you need more surgical skills than PRK or LASIK, but it's definitively easier than all type of keratoplasty or even phaco. So it's not so hard, but you need a little surgical skill.
And Dr. Reinstein, you've been doing SMILE so many years now. Do you remember anything about the learning curve at the time?
I'm gonna include. I exclude myself from the daredevils who started SMILE in the first place, but I will include myself as one of the pioneers of turning SMILE from a not reasonable option compared to LASIK to what is a better option than LASIK in 80% of eyes. So, as you know, we have a textbook that we wrote as a result of our learning curve. So we categorized our first 4,000 cases. We went through every single complication that we had in our learning curve. We analyzed it. We documented it. We showed how we repaired complications. We showed how to avoid them. We talked about instrumentation, and we developed a standard protocol. And so I know a lot about learning curve with SMILE because I teach it, as Sri Ganesh does. And I'm in touch with beginners all the time. And I've trained hundreds of, I don't know, maybe thousands of people on SMILE and on LASIK. And you know, Cyrille, I think you're right. I think lifting a flap is easier than taking a lenticule out. But I will possibly disagree that putting a flap back is easier than taking a lenticule out, because I'm a little bit finicky about flap replacement technique, and I can spend 1 hour discussing how to put a flap back. For me, a 0 microfold technique with a thin flap is expert LASIK, so 80 or 90 micron flaps with 0 microfolds. And so for me, that level of skill is actually comparable to SMILE lenticule removal. I think if you're going to do average LASIK, average LASIK is easier than you can't have average SMILE, because if you can't get the lenticule out, you didn't do the procedure. But from my standpoint, I think what people often forget is that LASIK is a far more complicated procedure than SMILE. Because not just the dexterity to remove the lenticule, forget about that. Managing an excimer laser is way more complicated than managing the VisuMax to take a lenticule out for SMILE. Because you have to take into consideration room conditions, humidity, calibration, the amount of time you're taking to lift a flap, all of these factors, setting an eye tracker, making sure the eye tracker is working properly, making sure the eye doesn't go outside of the hot zone and create a decentration even though the laser is tracking. The complexity of running an excimer laser means that LASIK, I think, is far more difficult to teach than SMILE. SMILE, you just have to teach how to remove a lenticule. And I have a number of fellows that have gone through our training system who attest to this. They say, I much prefer SMILE, it's way easier, just because of the complexity of the whole system of doing LASIK and managing a flap. And doing a LASIK enhancement after LASIK requires way more expertise than doing a LASIK enhancement after SMILE.
Dr. Ganesh, what do you say when you talk to your students, your fellows, about the learning curve for SMILE?
I've been doing SMILE since nearly 10 years now. I started in 2012, and over 10,000 procedures. Yes, there is a learning curve with SMILE. You need to learn how to applanate and dock, how to get the centration right, how to compensate for cyclotorsion for high cylinders, how to adjust your energy so that you get an optimal bubble layer, and the dissection technique itself, and how to deal with complications, intra-op complications like suction loss or retained lenticules, and also post-operative problems. So definitely there is a learning curve, and the surgical skill required for SMILE is higher than PRK or LASIK. So on a scale of 0 to 10, if phaco is somewhere at 8, SMILE would be somewhere at 6, regular LASIK would be somewhere at 4 or 5, and PRK would be at 1. Because now with PRK you have trans PRK, so the surgeon doesn't have to even touch the eye. They just know how to press the foot pedal and then it's done. If your refraction is right, you get everything right. But SMILE has a learning curve, and it's very important that you have a proper onboarding process and training. Zeiss has an onboarding process. Dan has courses for SMILE at the London Vision Clinic, and his textbook is great. It's in detail, and it gives every little small nuance of learning SMILE. We run a hands-on course with wet labs also, where candidates can come and train, and we have trained a lot of candidates on SMILE. So if you go through the proper training program and learn it as a procedure instead of being a weekend surgeon, SMILE surgeon, then I think you can get it right and really do well. There are a few surgeons who just want to attempt SMILE without going through the onboarding process, and they can have problems, big problems like retained lenticules, or they don't know how to optimize the energy, they get black spots, they get irregular astigmatism. So it can have its share of problems just like any other refractive procedure like LASIK. So it's very important to go through the proper training program, get over the learning curve, and I think it takes about 100, 150 eyes before you can actually be confident with the procedure.
Yeah. And that's if you go. That's even if you go through the formal training. I think most of the "what do I do next" emails that I get, I'm sure this is the same for you guys, are because the next thing I always ask is, "Can you send me the video?" And every video is video. Every case is videoed, so there's no excuse. And it's obvious. You start watching the video, it's like, okay, that's not protocol. That's not protocol. That's not protocol. That's not protocol. And it's so easy. You can just almost send the chapter on the standard operating procedure back to the surgeon and say, here's what you got to do next time. Because if you don't hold the globe, if you use the wrong instrument, if you don't identify the lower interface with the double-edged sign, it becomes easy if you follow the simple instruction booklet. It becomes a kind of scary mumbo jumbo art form if you're trying to learn it with 10 procedures being supervised by an application specialist who isn't a surgeon, and then you think you're ready to go. It would be the same with phaco. If you were observed with 10 phaco surgeries and they went really well, and then it's like, bye, enjoy. How would that go for you over the next, So anyway, yeah, I agree.
Dr. Temstet, at one point in time, perhaps you were hesitant to offer lenticule extraction, maybe at some point again. For other doctors out there who may be hesitant to offer lenticule extraction, what would you say to them now?
If you want to offer the best option for your patients, then there is no way around the lenticule extraction. Now other companies than Zeiss coming into the market with lenticule extraction, it also shows that the procedure is the future of refractive surgery. And also it may offer good opportunities with updates coming. Lenticule extraction with SMILE is in the market since more than 10 years. Meanwhile, it's 1 million times proven technology. Over 5 million eyes have been treated with convincing clinical outcomes reported in the peer-reviewed papers. Reinstein is one of the most papers redactor. It's an established, efficient, and well-known surgery. Sure, unexpected situations and challenge can happen, but That is in all type of surgeries. A good training and onboarding help to avoid such situations or manage it in the best way. And the recently launched VisuMax 800 even has surgeon supporting function like centration aid and cyclotorsion compensations. It is so much faster, less than 10 seconds for logical cut, are fairly good, predictable, and comfortable when you are depending on the patient calmness. Uh, from my point of view, it has never been a better time to start with lenticle extraction than now.
Dan, if you're on the podium and you sense there are doctors out there that are doubters about lenticule extraction, do you show them no mercy?
Do I look like someone who would do that? Have I ever been harsh on the podium to some of my esteemed colleagues? Look, I think we need to, I've just put together and I've started to give this lecture on how marketing and science interact or don't interact in the field of refractive surgery. And you know, in my SMILE example, I talk about, you know, the way that Zeiss kind of overreached a little bit at the beginning with the third generation is like LASIK is finished kind of talk. But they pulled back because they had the feedback, and to their credit. Look, when someone says to me, LASIK is better than SMILE, I just quote the literature. And the literature shows that there are studies that show that LASIK is better than SMILE. There are studies that show that SMILE is better than LASIK. And then there's our studies that show that we cannot find a difference between LASIK and SMILE in terms of outcomes. And I then conclude that if you get better results with LASIK than SMILE, it means you're not a good SMILE surgeon. And vice versa. If you're getting better results with SMILE than LASIK, it means you're not a good LASIK surgeon. But when you're doing each procedure at the optimal level, we cannot get a difference in outcomes. Perhaps for the very high myopias, it's slightly more accurate. SMILE is more accurate. Perhaps for cylinder correction, SMILE is more accurate, especially higher cylinders, because we have absolute control of the axis, because the eye is fixated. What I would say to people is, don't just shut something off because you have a commercial reason for not adopting it. If that's the case, then be honest. Say, look, my market won't support this kind of investment. But to say I'm not doing it because it isn't as good, then you're open to criticism. And yeah, I guess, in the nicest possible way, I like to, I don't mind, calling out bad ideas or biased opinions if I can back them up with data.
Dr. Ganesh, what do you think about remaining surgeons out there that are hesitant to offer SMILE? Any reason for that?
Yeah, I think it's mainly commercial. They don't have access to the equipment, or they are not trained in the procedure, and they're comfortable with LASIK or PRK. And so they just say that LASIK or PRK is better than SMILE. But we have all the three procedures, and we offer all the three procedures, and we get good outcomes with all three procedures. But SMILE has its advantages in the sense that it has less dry eye, better patient experience, and of course we find that the quality of vision, night vision, is better because of lesser abrasions. But these are some small differences. In terms of visual outcomes, I think most procedures perform well, like Dan said. But I think the SMILE technology has matured now. And it's the time for most people to adopt SMILE, because more than 5 million procedures have been done all over the world. And I think SMILE is driving the refractive market. If you look at the SMILE procedures, almost more than 25% of the refractive procedures are SMILE today. In just 10 years, it's just taken off. And it's driving the refractive market. And patients are opting for SMILE. They know about SMILE. They know it's a minimally invasive procedure, and so you don't want to be left behind in the refractive scene. So you can offer SMILE along with your LASIK and PRK and decide what's best for the patient, like we do. And I think with the new VisuMax 800, it's so much easier now. The time taken for the laser is much shorter, so you don't have problems like suction loss. It's a rarity with the 800. It's so fast that before the patient realizes the laser is done, And you also have aids like the centration aid and the cyclotorsion adjustment, which makes it more precise and less of a learning curve. And the laser itself is now optimized so that you have very nice smooth dissection, and the risk of complications are less. So, and what we have seen with the VisuMax 800, now we have done over 200 procedures, and the outcomes are excellent. So I think this is the time to jump in and get on to the lenticule extraction procedure so that you can offer it to your patients.
Dr. Ganesh, you mentioned the market a moment ago, and I was wondering if you could specifically comment more on how lenticule extraction has helped expand your patient base, if that's the case.
Yeah, if you look at my patients, but 10 years ago when I was doing femto LASIK, I was doing about 600 to 800 procedures a year, but Smile has grown my refractive procedure, and we do nearly about 1,500 to 1,800 procedures a year. So it has driven up the market because the patient experience, finally it's the patient experience. They want a safe procedure, they want something that is painless, something that does not have a lot of off time. They can get back to their work, their normal activities, and Smile offers this. So the patients love it. I mean, the experience is great. They don't have any downtime. And if your results are good, if you've developed your nomograms, if you optimize your laser, then it performs very well. And I think this is the, for my practice, it has really been a success because we were one of the first to adopt Smile in India. And even commercially it makes sense because you can charge a premium if you're doing a minimally invasive procedure, if you're giving the patient more comfort, better results, better experience. So that's what we do. We charge a premium for Smile because the Smile packs also are more expensive, and overall financially also the hospital has benefited because the numbers have grown and the cost of the revenue generated is more.
Dr. Temstet, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to tag on to that because obviously we're in completely different markets, right? I'm in central London on Harley Street. You're in Bangalore. I mean, but what's interesting is that, and I'm going to repeat, I don't like this. I don't like the fact, but I do agree with Sri that Smile is driving confidence in refractive surgery. In our practice, our presbyopic load has always been extremely busy for the last 15 years. I developed Presbyon. I've been doing it for 15 years. I don't do clear lens exchange with multifocal lenses if the cornea is suitable for LASIK. It doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you have a clear lens. And for us, that market segment has been made completely stable. I mean, it stopped when we closed the clinic, and it just took off again immediately as soon as we opened the doors. But for younger patients, we have seen a kind of like a surge, if you like, post-pandemic. And it's thanks to Smile, I would say, because they are convinced that that is the better way to go for themselves. And so there's no question that, and I say for the wrong reasons, because there was nothing wrong with LASIK. Anybody who was waited 10 years to have Smile should have had LASIK 10 years ago, because now they got 10 years more in their glasses and the risks of contact lens wear. But yes, Smile is driving growth because perceptually, patients prefer the idea of not having a flap, even though they might be wrong about the risks of a flap.
Dr. Temstet, have you attracted new patients due to lenticule extraction?
Not yet, but I hope and believe it will do. I don't have the VisuMax 800 yet, but I can tell you that a lot of patients ask for it. I guess they inform themselves via internet, on social media networks. They come to me and they want the same surgery than their friends got. Sometimes patients comes to me with a very precise request because of what they read or what they see, stories they watched on social media. So also some of my patients are afraid of LASIK or PRK, and Smile can be the way out.
Excellent. Back to Dr. Reinstein. How has data technology evolved over the last several years to improve outcomes of lenticule extraction?
What I would say about data is that it has become easier for surgeons to participate in nomogram development. Whereas 25 years ago, when I started, I happened to be good at mathematics and physics, and I could work Excel, so I would do my own nomograms. Not many could, and not many were gathering the data to do their nomogram because they weren't seeing post-ops after 1 day or 1 month. So I would say that we're talking here about Zeiss technology. Zeiss has a workplace which is being launched that integrates all of this information automatically. So you enter the patient data pre-op, that you don't have to enter it again. You just enter the post-op data, and boom, on an ongoing basis, you have an ongoing service that is providing you with a background service that you don't have to manage, that then programs your VisuMax 800 with the nomogram based on your style of practice and the way that you refract. So there's an example of an integrated solution by a provider who, is helping surgeons who might not have the technical knowledge to optimize their outcomes on their own using Excel. It can be done in the background for them using technology. I mean, there are a number of online systems. Probably the best manual system, where you have to enter the data yourself, is SurgiVision, run by Guy Kazarian. That system is exceedingly sophisticated and will improve the outcomes of practically any surgeon who's willing to bring a post-op back at the 1 or 3 month mark. So I think data management in that sense, is really the key to reducing your enhancement rates, getting happier patients who are promoters and less unhappy patients who need an enhancement who are maybe detractors.
Dr. Ganesh, any comments on data as it pertains to lenticule extraction nowadays?
Yeah, data is very important in any kind of refractive surgery, and collecting proper data is important because most refractive surgeons don't do a post-op refraction. They just check binocularly if the patient is 6'6", 20/20, they say you're fine and then send them off. They don't refract or put lenses because if the patient can see better with the glasses, then they start questioning the surgeon and they think that the the refractive correction is not 100%. But it's very important to refract the patient, check the best corrected vision post-op, use proper charts, proper distance, and get your data in. Because for nomogram development, you put in garbage, you get out garbage, and it's not going to help. So what is very important is to refract properly, follow proper protocol, and get the data in, and then you can develop your nomograms. And I think every surgeon has to develop his own nomograms because it depends upon, with LASIK, there's so many variables, the environment, the machine, and also how you refract pre-op, whether you're pushing minus or plus, and this will have an effect on, so you just can't use another surgeon's nomogram, and so you need to develop your own nomogram. And Zeiss now has the refractive workplace where you can just put in the post-op data like Dan said, and then it just develops the nomogram on an ongoing basis, which you can use. But I think it's very important for all refractive surgeons to develop their own nomograms, and for this data really helps. And this is something that should be done from day one. And all refractive surgeons should be trained as to how to collect data and how to analyze the data and develop nomograms. So this is what we teach our fellows also, because don't be hesitant to refract patients, don't be hesitant to check best corrected vision, because we always tell our patients the accuracy is plus or minus 0.5 or so, and this procedure is done to reduce your dependence on glasses. It's not to give you perfect vision, zero or eagle eye vision, and that's something that we should be careful not to market so we can actually get the correct data.
Meanwhile, Dr. Ganesh, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, as you're speaking, we're talking about accuracy here, but there's another area of data which has revolutionized refractive surgery, and that is preoperative diagnostics. So, epithelium, yes. I'm not going to do an interview without mentioning epithelium. The fact is that the widespread and generalized increased use of epithelial mapping in pre-op assessment has significantly improved our confidence in going ahead with surgery. these equivocal back surfaces, the yellow boxes on the bell and ambrosia, all these, the elevation is more than X number of microns. All of these questions are solved by an epithelial map. And so the anxiety in terms of should I or shouldn't I, do this case, I think has gone way down thanks to epithelial mapping. And that's important data. Not just that, but the devices now, obviously there's the Insight high-frequency ultrasound device, but a lot of these OCT devices now are also giving us instantaneous B scans in high resolution post-op. So if we have any questions about anything, we can instantly look at the cross-sectional anatomy of a cornea. And I have an MS-39 here in my own office. I mean, literally instead of a keratometer, I have an MS-39. I call that my slit lamp of the 20th century, and I call my OCT from MS-39 from CSO, I call that my slit lamp of the 21st century, because I then use that on the spot. So data, this is electronic and digitized data that has hugely revolutionized the way that we practice and make refractive surgery safer for everybody.
Dr. Ganesh, back to you. I heard that you've installed the first VisuMax 800 in India. Could you tell me what convinced you to start using that device?
We are part of the global trial for the VisuMax 800, so we got the equipment and installed it, and we have started the trial. And I, along with Dan and a few others, were involved in the development of the 800 from probably 2015. We started with Zeiss engineers, and we were involved in developing the technology. So it was very interesting to start off with using the VisuMax 800, and it's been great. It's beyond my expectations, and the results have been very good. Now I think the technology has matured, and then I think it has taken lenticule extraction to a whole new level.
Dr. Temstet, are you also looking forward to using the VisuMax 800?
Yeah, absolutely. We just acquired the new VisuMax 800, and I'm sure that it will be a great technology, and it's the right moment to begin with lenticule extraction, because with this new VisuMax, the length of lenticule creation is so fast and so easy. So I think it will be a very important democratization of the use of SMILE procedure. So
excellent. And I'm now reporting that we are getting inundated with questions from our attendees. Let me go to one of them. Panelists, what are the energy settings you prefer for the VisuMax 500 in your setups? Dr. Reinstein?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Before anybody steps on any doo-doo, the answer is the ones that work on your laser. This is a misunderstanding about femtosecond lasers that people haven't used them much. There is no such thing as two femtosecond lasers that are the same. Well, there are. The point is there's a huge range of how the optics deal with that infrared beam. And so you can have a laser that operates at 150 nanojoules, and you can have a laser that operates at 100 nanojoules, and they get the same results. So the answer to the question is, do not ask that question, other than asking it of your application specialist who comes and helps you set it, and because you've read the book chapter on energy settings and you've attended Sri's course and done some cases, you've learned how to micromanage your energy settings during a surgical day. I'll change the settings from one eye to the next and from one patient to the next as I'm going along, because some corneas need more energy than others. There's not one setting for every cornea. So I wanted to jump in there because I don't want to get into a little kerfuffle about numbers, because the numbers are relative. It's a relative setting, and it's not one number.
This question gets a little more specific. I don't know if this helps at all, but it says, I'm summarizing some English here, so just a moment. Also, do you feel the energy settings for lenticule cut and cap cut require different spot settings or energy settings? I ask this because in most cases, the posterior cut seems perfectly optimized gas bubble pattern, but the anterior cut seems to have a little more, it looks like oblong in the center perhaps.
So we have a publication on this. It was published in the JRS where we use differential energies. You can't really change the energy from the lenticule cut to the cap cut because then the laser has to recalibrate. So what we do is we change the spot size, spot settings. So what we do is we use a 4.5 spot size for the anterior cut, that is the cap cut, and for the lenticular cut we use a 4.3. And we optimize it because the deeper layers of the cornea have thicker fibers. And so they need a little higher energy. So the energy per square millimeter is more if you reduce the spot spacing. So that's how we manage it. We reduce the spot spacing for the deeper cut and we optimize the energy. And with this, we find better results. We find that visual recovery is better, the scatter is less, and we have a publication in the JRS if anybody wants to go through it on differential spot spacing.
Next question. Oh, go ahead.
Well, the only thing to add about that is that for lower myopias, I mean, Sri, you published this paper as well on using higher minimum thicknesses, but for lower myopias, you actually you're more superficial in the cornea for the lenticule cut. You actually need less energy. So you can get OBL with the same settings that you would have at 250 microns from the back. You would probably use those same settings if you're, 370 microns from the back is probably too much. So we will back off on the spot spacing of a low myope if it's high up in the cornea, because otherwise you can get OBL. So that's what I'm talking about. You have to become adept with what the settings are and how to change them based on the case, the eye, how the laser is performing at that particular time. I mean, we have an Sri, I'll mention here, I'll advertise a little bit here, but our course, which we do in June and November, we've been doing it online since the pandemic started. We're going live for the first time in London in June, but we have recorded these courses and we have therefore allowed them now to be online. So anybody who wants to hear a little bit more about what I'm talking about in the way I'm talking about it, you can actually sign up online on demand for our full course and take it in your own time.
Another audience member says, I suppose SMILE is a more expensive procedure than LASIK. Is it subsidized or covered by health insurance in your country? Could we comment on where you are and insurance and that kind of thing? Dr. Temstet, anything there in France?
In France, there is no cover by national health insurance. It's just if you have a private insurance, you can have the cost can be paid by your private insurance. Yes, in France, it's a little bit much expensive to do a SMILE than LASIK, but it's maybe 100, 200 euro, but not so much.
The only two countries I'm aware of that really support refractive surgery in the private sector are Denmark. So Denmark, if you're above -6, the government pays for your refractive surgery. And obviously, if you're in Denmark, you're going to go to Aarhus and you're going to get SMILE with Jesper Portal and his team. In Switzerland, there is a insurance system that subsidizes corneal refractive surgery. If it's a sort of incentive to sign up with the insurance company. But basically, it's elective surgery, right? And I think that quite reasonable that in a developed country, you should be, saving, like doing one less holiday and paying for your LASIK rather than, depending on the state when, you have cancer services and screening services and other dementia services that need the money. In the developing world, that's a different factor. And I just wrote an editorial which came out in the January Journal of Refractive Surgery issue, talking about SMILE is the ideal procedure for tackling the global burden of uncorrected refractive error. Sri, of course, has a program to do this. We started a program in Nepal many years ago with Sri Ganesh, with Kishore Pradhan, who came to train with us, and then we started a program with him at the Tilganga Institute. And, the idea that you can take someone who is too poor to afford a pair of glasses and then do an 8-minute procedure that heals in 2 hours, doesn't require any post-op care, and eliminate their dependency, that's special.
From a speaker's experience, PRK compared to SMILE, which one has better corneal biomechanic properties? Someone wants to know. Dr. Temstet?
I think it's much more a question for Dan Reinstein or Sri Ganesh, because I didn't made so much SMILE procedure, but I know PRK. I did a lot of PRK, but for the biomechanical aspects, I don't think I'm the right person to respond at this.
Yeah, look, I am, because I published on this, I suppose.
Sure.
Look, if you look at theoretical studies, and there's a lot of discussion. I mean, if Cynthia Roberts was on this call, she and I would be having a fight right now. But technically speaking, if you're leaving anterior stromal fibers intact, you're going to leave the cornea stronger than if you take them out with a PRK. Yes, the cap is redundant once you remove the tissue. Yes, you'd have to wait for some deformity of the back part of the cornea to stretch out to take on the tensile strength of the cap. It's a big discussion. But you know what I would say to that? The answer to that question is I would say don't ask that question again. It's a bad question. I'm sorry. It's a bad question. Do you know why? Because if someone has form first keratoconus, they shouldn't really be having any surgery on their cornea. They should be having cross-linking and maybe some regularization. But doing refractive surgery on form first keratoconus is just a slippery slope. You might get lucky, but it's not the best thing to do. And you can't do either procedure more than the other. The criteria for corneal refractive surgery are not one leaves the cornea stronger, so I can do that. Okay? Would you agree, Sri?
Yeah, 100%. Because if the patient has an abnormal topography, then whether you do SMILE, LASIK, or PRK, the patient can end up with ectasia. So biomechanics is not only about the incidence of ectasia, it's also about long-term stability of the procedure. And if you look at the long-term stability, I think SMILE has the best long-term stability out of all the three procedures. And so biomechanically, the cornea is stable. PRK has different issues. PRK may appear to be stronger because you have a pseudo Bowman's layer, which is basically a scar after PRK, because you're removing the Bowman's and the anterior stroma, and it heals by scarring, it heals by secondary intention. So you have a scar there, and that is stiffer. So when you do biomechanical measurements, you may sometimes find that the cornea, as measured, may be a little stronger with PRK than with LASIK or SMILE. But if you look at the long-term stability of the refraction over a number of years, then with SMILE it is very stable. The other aspect is epithelial healing and remodeling, which is much more in PRK than with LASIK. And that can affect the refraction and the long-term stability. So I think Dan has done a lot of work on that, and he can comment on that. But so you need to take into consideration all these factors for healing, and just not the biomechanics measurement.
Yeah, and let's add to that PRK leaves the cornea, susceptible to UV exposure for the rest of that patient's life. So if you have excess UV exposure 10 years after your PRK, you can develop reticular haze, loss of best spectacle correction vision, irregular astigmatism. PRK is an inferior procedure in that regard to the other two in terms of long-term benefit. We have plenty of evidence for that now, and it's a much more aggressive procedure. You talk about less invasive, that's LASIK. LASIK is less invasive than PRK, as far as the cornea is concerned, because there's way more wound healing and all of these TGF XYZs that are going all over the place, metalloproteinases, all of this inflammatory process that has to occur during the healing of PRK It's a typhoon on the cornea compared to LASIK and SMILE, which are clean, very little keratocyte activation, very, very neat stroma to stroma interfaces. So in answer to your question, I know where you were going with that, but don't go there. Yeah, is what I would say.
Dr. Mohammed Al Musa wants to know, are there any hyperopia treatments available with SMILE?
Yeah, well, if you don't mind, I mean, we did the first hyperopic studies with Kishore in Nepal, and then subsequently we've just finished the multi-center hyperopic trial. Sri was part of that. Yes, it's doable. Like with myopia, it's going to take a little bit of time to get it as good as LASIK. And let me add here that doing hyperopic corneal corrections is a different science from doing myopic. You cannot just say, I can do myopia, and then you switch to hyperopia. There's 10 things that you have to know that you never had to know for myopia when you're doing hyperopic corneal correction. So it's not a simple switch. It's not just put in plus instead of minus in the laser. Centration, epithelial profiles, post-op epithelial measurement and monitoring is all kinds of things that you have to do extra if you're doing hyperopia. The answer is it will be available with the VisuMax 800, partially because of the benefits of the assistance in centration and the assistance in cyclotorsion. These things are more critical in hyperopia, and that's why and the speed, right? Because it's a much, much longer ablation because it's a much larger lenticule. It's an 8.8 millimeter lenticule. So with the 500, it takes longer, suction loss risk is higher, all of those things. So yes, it's coming, but watch this space because, for us, I mean, we actually got better outcomes still with LASIK than we did in the hyperopic SMILE study. I mean, I think you would agree with that, Sri.
Yeah, I think hyperopia is a different ball game. You can have loss of best corrected visual acuity, and with SMILE, I think the procedure has to be refined a little more. But our initial results are very encouraging in the global trial. It works. You can do hyperopic SMILE, but there are a lot of things that have to be kind of taken care of, like Dan said. And I think with the 800, it's going to be much better. And I think we'll get much better results with hyperopic SMILE with the 800.
Wonderful. Well, does anybody have any final comments on this exchange?
I think we pretty much did an A to Z on the whole of refractive surgery. I mean, we didn't talk a lot about phakic IOLs, but no, it's really interesting.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an edifying exchange, and I'd like to thank all speakers for their support. Meanwhile, we have appreciated your interest in the Anchorman Webinar Series, and it's about time for me to ride off into the sunset. So, you stay classy, San Diego, or wherever you are, and good night, and all the best of luck. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.